2024 was a big year for completing model railroad projects. In total, we had 6 brass locomotives painted, 13 passenger cars finished, 2 kit bash locomotives, 2 custom bobber cabooses, 2 repainted engines, and 2 engines converted to DCC. Now, let's take a look at some of these projects. The first project of the year was repainting my Casey Jones locomotive. This locomotive starred in its own little short video earlier this year. The main part of this project was repainting the smoke box, the cab windows, and white-walling the wheels. I also added more number decals around the locomotive, adding LEDs and working marker lights. The finishing touch was to add Casey Jones and Sim Webb to the cab. The next project completed was my custom-made Countersport in Port Allegheny number 15. Of all the C&PA locomotives, 15 is my favorite, and I knew I would have to make it at some point. There's a lot of work that went into this locomotive, and it really deserves its own video showing how I made it. And what would 15 be without its very own caboose? C&PA 21 was a very easy custom to make. I started with a classic Bachmann bobber caboose, added handrails, a ladder, and modified the chassis. Now I can run a complete C&PA freight train. Next up is a project that has been completed from last year. This is the Tioga Central Excursion Fleet. Even before it was announced the Tioga Central trains were coming to an end, I knew that I wanted to recreate it in HO scale. This was a bit tricky, seeing as most of the cars do not have HO scale equivalents. After a lot of research, I settled on 7 cars that I think best show what the Tioga Central cars were like. Some of them were as easy as giving a new number, while others had to be modified with new trucks and patched windows. At some point, all of them will have custom interiors as well if they do not have one already. The cars in the consist include Power Car number 410, Open Air Car 300 called Ives Run, Club Car number 500 Canyon Club, Coach 285, Ned Marrow, New York Central 2930, Table Car number 365, and Dining Car 370, the Crooked Creek. Sticking with the theme of Tioga County Railroad history, here we have my custom Fallbrook Coal Company number 70, known as the Northern Tier. 3 railroads had these locomotives delivered to them by Schenectady Locomotive Works, and the Fallbrook Railroad was one of them. This made the Fallbrook variant very easy to make. Up next is my Reading Railroad number 2102. I decided to go with how 2102 looked in her working career as a freight engine, because while I am building up a Reading and Northern passenger fleet, I have a lot more freight cars that I can run with it instead. Returning back to the Fallbrook, here's my custom Fallbrook Railway caboose. This project was a lot more ambitious, but once again, I used a Bachmann bobber as a base. I scratch-built a new cupola out of polystyrene, and made similar chassis modifications like I did to the C&PA caboose. Now, I am one step closer to making a complete Fallbrook Railway freight train. Turning again to custom brass painted locomotives, here we have my Central Railroad of New Jersey Camelback number 774. a Maryland and Pennsylvania Railroad Doodlebug, number 62, the Southern Pacific MT5, number 4376. I chose the last two digits of the running number to be 76, as the locomotive was completed on the 4th of July. The last brass locomotive painted this year was my 2-truck Climax. I do not have a road name for this engine, but I did convert it to a coal burner. Of all the geared locomotives, Climax locomotives have always been aesthetically pleasing to me. And I do love the Russian iron boiler and the white trim on the running boards. Back in March, Tom and I went down to the Everett Railroad to film the first steam excursion of the year. While I was already making plans to make the Everett Railroad number 11 and passenger train in HO scale, after visiting the railroad for myself, I was more inspired than ever. Number 11 was not an easy locomotive to kit bash, and it really deserves its own video showing how I made it. Unlike Strasburg 89, 11 was easy in that I didn't have to make very many modifications to the chassis. While the coaches were relatively easy to make, the most difficult part was bending each handrail to be the right shape. These also got painted interiors, based off of photos of the real coaches. While they are a bit shorter than the real coaches, I think they fit pretty well with 11. Heading back over to Potter County, here's another C&PA locomotive. This being one of the General Electric 44-ton locomotives, number D1. This locomotive is special because I actually made its twin, number D2. This was a surprise for Tom, who is also a big Countersport and Port Allegheny fan. Moving over to electric projects, I decided to convert my Pennsylvania Railroad BP20 to DCC and sound. I also obtained a pair of RF16 Sharks, both were DCC, but I decided to take one of the circuit boards and put it in my old Athearn Blue Box F units instead. This now made the RF16B unit an actual B unit, the B unit both picking up power, sending it to the circuit board in the A unit, and the circuit board sending information back to the motor in the B unit. It took a considerable amount of shaving down to get the DCC chip to fit inside the Athearn B unit, but it is nice to have another DCC locomotive for the Pennsylvania Railroad. I also obtained and painted some wooden coaches to go with my Hollywood train. These are old Ambroid kits, and the observation car has brass ends. The paint scheme I chose for these cars is loosely based on the Santa Fe and Disneyland Railroad that the passenger cars at Disneyland used to have. While I got a lot done in 2024, here's a look at some potential candidates for projects in 2025. Of the 8 locomotives, most of these are kit bash projects. But there are a couple of other pieces of rolling stock to work on as well. One locomotive that is really close to being complete is my BNSF number 3110. For those who watched the Christmas Train Show and Sail video, you will recognize this locomotive. By the time of recording, this locomotive has already been decaled and weathered. A much larger kit bash project will be my Buffalo and Susquehanna 280. While brass models of this engine do exist, I am going to go with the kit bash route on this one. Another Fallbrook Railroad engine up for kit bash is Fallbrook Coal Company number 3, named Tioga. A New York Central 442 Atlantic, a Boston and Maine Pacific to be numbered 3713, a Tyco Mantua General, a Roundhouse 060 tender locomotive, and another Fallbrook engine, this being one of their more modern 440s. A relatively easy project will be repainting these coaches to be Fallbrook Railroad passenger cars. We also have a Pennsylvania Railroad RPO kit, a Pennsylvania Railroad bobber caboose, and at some point, a whole fleet of Fallbrook Coal Company coal hawkers. Ultimately, I want a mix of Fallbrook Coal Company, New York Central, Reading, and Pennsylvania Railroad coal cars. The last potential project is a Norfolk and Western caboose. And with that completes our look at the projects I completed back in 2024 and some potential projects for 2025. Seeing that I'm always on the lookout for new projects, don't be surprised if there's a couple more that show up in next year's video. I hope you enjoyed this video of my projects from 2024. Like, subscribe, and comment down below if you would like to see an in-depth video on any of these projects. This is Andrew K4, and I hope you have a Happy New Year.